Welcome to the GSMC Business News Podcast, the show dedicated to keeping you up to date on all things concerning business, technology, and the stock market. Get a head start on the day as we keep you updated on the latest goings-on Wall Street, money, jobs, and technology. If you're looking for a podcast to keep you informed and ahead of the game in business, the GSMC Business News Podcast has you covered.
Welcome to the GSMC Business News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Paula DuPont, and I'm really excited to talk about some of the topics that we have for today's show regarding business news, of course. A lot of the topics fall under the umbrella of mortgages. We're going to talk about the unfortunate situation with mortgage defaults, but other more positive news about mortgages in terms of an increase in mortgage applications, suggesting perhaps an increase in the housing market activity. So there's a few things to talk about on that topic. We're going to talk about remote work and Facebook, what they're talking to their employees about, talking about malls and what they are doing to prepare to open, and then a little bit about a unique approach to thermal testing for customers and also employees. And finally, we're going to talk about Tesla. So a lot to cover, and we're going to get started in just a moment. As I mentioned, we're going to get started in talking about mortgages. And sadly, the first approach to that topic is talking about delinquencies on mortgages. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone the fact that with one of the highest unemployment rates that we've had in perhaps decades, and the effects of the coronavirus, businesses being shut down, a lot of factors influencing families' well-beings and their ability to pay mortgages. So consequently, mortgage delinquencies have surged by 1.6 million in April, and that's the largest single-month jump in history. The data that was collected by Black Knight, which is a mortgage technology and data provider, said that homeowners were both past due on mortgage payments, but who aren't in forbearance, and also those who are in forbearance were part of that statistic, that 1.6 million. At 6.45%, the national delinquency rate nearly doubled from 3.06 in March, which was the largest single-month increase recorded. So we went from 3.06% in March to 6.45 in April. And nearly three times the prior record for a single month during the height of the financial crisis in 2008. So, as I said, it's not all that unexpected. I think we knew that might happen, and that we would see these kind of numbers. But it's always, of course, very sobering and grave when you hear them when they finally come out. It took more than 18 months before the first 1.6 million homeowners became delinquent during the Great Recession. So that gives you an idea. So that was more than 18 months from the point of the 2008 financial crisis. So where we are now is obviously a lot more accelerated, but it's part of the steepness of that curve and decreasing and what we expected. And then, of course, we were expecting a more sharp increase as we started to recover. The Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, which was passed in March, allows homeowners to suspend their mortgage payments for up to a year on federally backed mortgages. It doesn't protect mortgages that aren't backed by the government, which make up about half of all mortgages in the U.S. About 3.6 million homeowners were past due on their mortgages by the end of April. That included the roughly 211,000 borrowers who were in active foreclosure prior to that point. So not great, but again, some of the mortgage companies were allowing for some flexibility in homeowners paying. Where that goes from this point on, and when it starts to really have negative consequences for homeowners, I guess probably varies by what mortgage company that you're working with and how delinquent you are. Just from that same study that I referenced before, it talks about the top 100 largest metropolitan areas and the amount of delinquency increases that they had during that month. Miami had a 7.2% increase, Las Vegas 6.2%, and New York City 5.4%. So now let's take a look at the other side of the mortgage topic on a much more positive note. Mortgage rates have remained below 3.3% for 4 straight weeks. They have fallen to near record lows recently. The 30-year fixed-rate mortgage averaged 3.24% for the week ending May 21st, down 4 basis points from a week ago. This week's declines in rates was prompted by the Federal Reserve comments that were made about mortgage rates slid after a sobering assessment from the Federal Reserve of the tough economic road ahead. Now, the Federal Reserve has said that it would keep interest rates low for an extended period of time to help the economy bounce back from the coronavirus pandemic, but of course said that gains have to be made in terms of the health side of the virus, meaning we need the vaccine and other treatments. Still, the fact that mortgage rates are so low is probably one of the reasons why that we're seeing some growth in the housing market and in an increase in mortgage applications. Purchase volume was just 1.5% lower than a year ago when it came to new homes. Mortgage applications to purchase a home rose 6% last week from the previous week, according to the Mortgage Bankers Association. If mortgage demand is an indicator, buyers are coming back to the housing market far faster than anticipated, despite the coronavirus shutdowns and job losses. In terms of mortgage applications to purchase a home, those rose 6% last week from the previous week, according to the Mortgage Bankers Association. Purchase volume was just 1.5% lower than a year ago. So I think that's pretty encouraging news because you figure there's going to be some fluctuation year to year, and the fact that it's only 1.5% lower than last year, is pretty promising. Applications for home purchases continue to recover from April's sizable drop and have now increased for 5 consecutive weeks. And incidentally, this information comes from coverage that I saw on CNBC. And it also pointed to the fact that perhaps these numbers are up because, states have begun to reopen. People have been able to get out and go to open houses. Buyers who've been wanting to buy a house even before the pandemic are now able to get out and see houses and then apply. So there was a lot of pent-up demand, it's believed. So Anyway, we're going to talk more about housing market and housing trends in the next segment. And we talk a little bit about the suburban boom that we may be seeing. So more on that just after this commercial break.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Are you looking for a podcast that gives you all of the latest news from the world of finance? Then check out the GSMC Financial News Podcast. We'll delve into the ups and downs of the stock market, changes in the economy, and news from the world of real estate and technology. From breaking news on the New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, or the overseas market, to updates on the bond market, if there's money to be made, we'll cover it on the GSMC Financial News Podcast.
These days, with so many of us still in lockdown, in fact, I think probably everywhere in the country, we're still restricted in some way, no matter how much your state has already opened up to business or people have returned to work. We know that we still aren't anywhere near what life was like before the pandemic. Maybe in some ways in a good way, but for the most part, not a lot of normalcy. But when it comes to the housing market, as we talked about in the last segment, it's nice to see that there are some signs that things are starting to move. Things are starting to pick up. And we mentioned that the mortgage rates have been at a record low recently and are likely to continue to be for a little while longer anyway. Between that, the fact that people are able to get out now and start looking at houses, besides just looking at them online, they can go and physically look at them. And then you have this whole other phenomenon of more people working from home. And now people are starting to find out whether or not their company is going to allow them to continue working from home, if that's even something that they want to do. And we've heard that, some big companies like Amazon and Microsoft are extending their work from home policies, as are a lot of other companies as well. But there will be others obviously returning to work. It just seems that a big area, in the tech sector, where more people are being able to continue to work from home, this same group of people have had to pretty much locate in cities or large urban areas, to go into that type of job. And so now some of the big real estate companies, including Zillow, the online realtor or realty service, are saying that they predict a suburban boom in the United States as more remote workers kind of move away from the cities where they had to stay before and are now moving out to the suburbs. And in some cases, they're seeing where they want to get houses that are maybe a little different, have different requirements now than workers did before in order to accommodate working from home. I'm thinking obviously like an office where maybe before that wasn't as much a priority. In some of the coverage that I saw, there was an article that said because of these trends of more work from home, real estate seems to feel that there will be a suburban boom in the housing market. And that in a survey recently that came out by Zillow, they found that 75% of Americans working from home due to COVID-19 would prefer to telecommute at least half of the time once the pandemic subsides. The same survey said 66% said they would consider moving if their job allowed them to continue telecommuting. Another firm, Redfin, a real estate company, they did their survey and it also showed some similar results. 50% of respondents in cities like New York, Boston, San Francisco, Seattle said that they would consider moving out of the city if work from home became permanent. These trends in the job market are leading economists to predict that post-pandemic housing preferences may move away from the dense metropolitan areas, as I said earlier. And also, as I mentioned, this one particular article said that the amount of space desired by home shoppers will also shift. Zillow predicts that larger homes, especially those with extra rooms or home offices, will be in high demand. But there is still a feeling that proximity to a metropolitan area is still crucial. A lot of it has to do with the resources available in a more metropolitan area, more restaurants and other places that you'd find more in a concentrated setting. Prior to the pandemic, the housing affordability crisis was already driving people from large cities to small anyway. So it's just interesting to see what's happening now because of the telecommuting situation. They expect to see more telecommuting to once a week for, in places like where people would go from Sacramento to drive into San Francisco, or from Tacoma to Seattle, or New Hampshire to Boston. Basically, the popular suburbs of those metropolitan areas. According to a Pew Research Center study, only 7% of American workers had the option to telecommute prior to the pandemic. And now over 40% of jobs could be performed remotely. See, this is what people have been saying all along. And when they try to make a case to their company about allowing them to telecommute, many people have said for a long time that their jobs could be done pretty much from anywhere. And now companies who've been forced to see that and have had to adapt, HR policies and other things to accommodate that, now they get it. So at least that door has been opened for those who want to do it. I have seen some other studies and informal anecdotal conversations with people where they're anxious to get back into an office setting, or into a classroom or to wherever it is that they work, restaurants, and more, more than just well, of course, restaurants, they're not going to be telecommuting anyway. That's probably a sore subject. But nonetheless, what I'm saying is there are people who, given the option of working from home and going back to an office setting, that there are those people who do want to do that. But aside from whether people choose to work remotely or go into an office, I think there still is probably part of the group that's wanting to move to the suburbs, perhaps wanting to do that from the standpoint of not being in such a crowded atmosphere as in a more urban area, and wanting to have some space, at least in their personal life, more than they would have living in an urban setting. So that's one of the hypotheses of this trend that we're starting to see, aside from just the increase in remote work. So we are going to take another break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Facebook and how they are addressing remote working and the shift in where people live. So more on that in just a moment.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Do you work in the world of marketing and advertising? Are you a media buyer or the owner of an agency? Have you been looking for a podcast to help stay on top of all the goings-on of those worlds? The GSMC Marketing News Podcast is dedicated to keeping you up to date on all things concerning marketing and advertising. Get the latest marketing news, from what major businesses have planned for the coming year to the newest trends in advertising, from podcasts, digital and streaming, to the old standbys of radio, television, and billboards. The GSMC Marketing News Podcast has you covered, whether you're a marketing agent or a business trying to expand your brand.
So in the last segment, we touched on remote working and particularly zoning in on Silicon Valley and then other places in the country where you have a lot of tech people who perhaps moved to a certain city or area for their job and perhaps were recruited from somewhere else to be in that area to work for that company. And now they are getting to work remotely, which could be done anywhere. So Facebook is one of the companies that had allowed many of its employees to work remotely. They had to. I mean, in a lot of ways, they just had to do that. And recently, CEO Mark Zuckerberg said he predicts that 50% of the company's employees could be working remotely within the next 5 to 10 years. That didn't seem like such a staggering number to me, given that so many of them are already working from home. But I guess the fact that it's going to be more formalized and that's how the jobs will be written and be designed for is to be in that remote space. The company will begin allowing certain employees to work remotely full time. Those employees will have to notify the company if they move to a different location by January 1st, 2021. As a result, those employees may have their compensations adjusted based on their locations. So Zuckerberg said this, the idea being that, the taxes that are paid perhaps to the local city or municipality, that would all have to be adjusted. So there's going to be some paperwork and some formalities involved in making that shift. But I think, he said this in a message to his employees about this change and the fact that that jobs were going to be designed to be exclusively remote in the coming years. I think was a pretty bold statement and one that's really, I guess, embracing the times here and what we're all facing and what companies are facing. He said, Zuckerberg said in his message to employees that this shift to more remote work was not going to be, an overnight kind of thing, that they were going to take a measured approach to opening up permanent remote work positions for existing employees. He said that by doing this and kind of opening up to a broader talent pool across the country, it will allow Facebook to consider people that maybe prior couldn't move to big cities, or that they wouldn't consider it. And so now there will be more to draw from to attract them to work for Facebook. CNBC had an item about this, and it said that about 95% of Facebook's employees are working remotely right now. So that's, to address the coronavirus. A survey conducted by Facebook found that 50% of employees said they were as productive working from home as they were at the office. Among Facebook employees, 40% said they were extremely very or somewhat interested in full-time remote work. And among that subset of employees, 75% said they were either pretty confident or they might move to a different city if they could work remotely. So that's kind of interesting, just the fact that they would, that they're thinking about that. That's 75%. That's a pretty big number. The article did say, and then Zuckerberg did say, that employees would have to meet certain criteria in order to qualify for these permanent remote positions. Some of the things that they would consider would be the experience, so more experienced employees versus recent college grads, which was pointed out as a group that would not be eligible to get these positions, these certain new positions. He said that They would have to have a strong recent performance record, and they would have to be part of teams that support remote work. And they would also have to get approval from their group leaders. What's interesting, too, is that during this time, well, actually, prior to the pandemic, Facebook had launched its Workplace app, which is their company enterprise communication software. And they had, as I said, they had launched it prior, and I guess they had as its base 3 million paid users in October, and they went to 5 million during this pandemic. So they've seen an increase. It was maybe good timing in a way. And I think it's interesting that a company that is developing tools for remote work, that they have to come out with a very formalized plan of how they're going to enable more remote work going forward. So I think in a way they have to. I mean, if they're going to promote this product and have people standing behind it, that it does make things seamless. I mean, that's pretty much the function of all these different types of programs like Zoom and Microsoft Teams and some of the other ones, is the idea of making it more of a seamless type of meeting or workspace for file sharing and that kind of thing. So the other thing that kind of occurred to me is I know years ago in the workplace, there was a lot of concern about people, and I'm not talking about at Facebook, I'm talking about at other workplaces, allowing people to work from home. They wondered, are people going to be on social media when they're not being watched by the company, or they're not logged into their business computer? Are they going to be on Facebook and things like that? And in fact, I know that was an issue too for companies when they would issue company phones to the employees, where they didn't want them using social media apps. So I'm just curious how that works when you work for a company like Facebook, and if they have, maybe they want you to be playing on Facebook all day. I don't know, but I imagine there's some work to be done, and social media in general could be a distraction from that. So that's just my 2 cents in on that story, but I think that ties into the whole idea of moving out to the suburbs and what we talked in the previous segment. So we are going to take actually another break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the Mall of America, and we're going to talk about malls in general and what they're doing to prepare to bring customers back.
Hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be, visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Earlier, I was talking about mortgages and led off talking about the unfortunate news about mortgage delinquencies. And adding to that list is the Mall of America, unfortunately. The Mall of America, you may know, is the biggest shopping center in the country, and they have missed 2 months of payments on its $1.4 billion mortgage. So I don't know what their monthly mortgage payments are, but obviously carrying a $1.4 billion mortgage, it's got to be pretty significant. And this is according to something that I saw on CNBC, and it's definitely a sign of how much the retail industry is hurting because of this. I mean, of course, everyone is to some degree, but retail is really taking a big hit right along there with restaurants and hotel owners. So it stands to reason that malls would be kind of brought down with that. They have the Mall of America is operated by private developers 555 Group, and they had skipped mortgage payments in April and May, according to a New York-based research firm that tracks mortgage-backed securities. And the mall had closed its doors because of COVID back on March 17th. And it has been working on coming back and reopening, I believe, in the coming weeks. In fact, I think I saw that they're planning to open in early June. But the continuing issue of being able to pay the mortgage is still probably going to be a challenge, given that other retailers, perhaps within the mall, will just be starting to come back, and they have to make a lot of new changes to accommodate the needs customers will have to feel safe and protected from the virus. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute, about the measures that malls need to take to make customers feel safe. But in terms of the Mall of America and its current situation with its mortgage, they're not the only ones. They were primarily pointed out in this article just because they're the biggest. But you have other malls throughout the country that are facing the same problem. A lot of them because of the fact that the retailers aren't being able to pay their rent. So that's something that's probably, going to be an issue going forward as well. Apparently, at the start of this week, the percentage of commercial mortgage-backed security loans in that category are 30 or more days delinquent for the retail sector was 10%. So that's kind of not a great sign. And there's some thought that we're going to start seeing some forbearances coming in because of that. So that's not a great news story, but again, not all that unexpected either, given what's happening. But we are seeing that that malls have been preparing somewhat for how they're going to reopen and bring customers back and give them the confidence that their mall shopping will be safe. And I'd seen some news talking about some of the changes talked about by one of the biggest retail shopping center owners in the U.S., which is Unibail Rodamco Westfield, URW. And some of the things that they're doing to prepare for people coming back into the malls, or at least attracting them back. One of the things that they may be looking at, or that they are looking at, is for customers to make an appointment via a mobile app that they've developed to visit a specific retailer store. so that you'll have shopping by appointment at some of their shopping centers. They will also be able to check how many people are in a mall at any given time on the web so that they can plan a trip around less crowded periods. So a customer would be able to do that, in other words. Shoppers can also use designated curbside parking spots at the mall to pick up online orders or buy a quick bite from an eatery in the food court via DoorDash or Uber Eats. So it seems like that's a pretty innovative solution to be able to, help some of the vendors or the retailers within the mall, especially in the food court. I wouldn't have thought to use DoorDash or Uber Eats for something like that. So it's kind of interesting that they're going to be doing that. URW owns 90 shopping centers across 12 countries, including one in Paramus, New Jersey, and in Los Angeles. It has 5 properties that are back open in Florida, and I believe perhaps at the time that you're hearing this recording, they expect to have 9 open in the U.S. So it's probably happening right now. One of the other things that URW is considering as part of the startup or reopening of the mall is the fact that many of the retailers will have a glut of inventory that has either continued to amass or that was left from the season or before they closed the doors in March. The mall owner said it is looking at ways to offer flash deals within its mobile app to help retailers clear through excess merchandise. It's also looking at some of the empty store spaces, the ones that aren't rented right now, and using them as places where stores could have a quote-unquote outlet, and they can sell some of their excess inventory there. So another thing is, I think that, in order to address how shoppers feel about going in, they've seen that where malls have opened up, there hasn't been this big swell of shoppers coming, but they're starting to see where things have increased a little bit. At Simon Property Group's Haywood Mall in Greenville, South Carolina, visits during the first 11 days of May were down 63% compared with a year ago. However, the mall reopened on May 1st, and since that time, it's steadily coming back. A study of 11 malls that have reopened this month found almost every day each of the malls has seen a significant jump in visits compared to the days prior. So it does look like it's coming back. Malls are also saying they're going to put up more hand sanitizing stations, offer masks for people that want them. They're doing a number of things. And as I said, the mobile app will be another way for them to reach out and give shoppers more control over their visit. So a lot to look forward to when we can get back in the mall. We're going to take another break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about another type of technology that we might see at the malls and other places when they're open.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
I mentioned at the end of the last segment something that we might see at malls back when we are able to get back into them. And this is something called it's a contactless temperature checking kiosk. And it's a new technology that's been developed by companies IntraEdge and Pyramid. They have created a contactless kiosk that can check the temperature of up to 1,500 people per hour. This kiosk uses thermal imaging technology, and actually they boast an error margin of less than 1/10 of a degree Fahrenheit. So I thought it was interesting. I saw this article about it, and as I continue to look for any new innovations or ways that companies are coming up with to help address, the screening process, how we can make some of these public spaces safer. And so it caught my eye to see this kiosk idea because, of course, it allows for more people to be screened in a place where you're going to have more people coming in and out. Since businesses have been closed since mid-March, and they're looking for ways to prevent the spread of the virus, they're eager to welcome back staff and are looking for some type of technology or system that they can use that will make their workspaces safer, make their businesses and public spaces safer. Typically, though, trying to do mass temperature checks can be overwhelming. The handheld temperature readers are not a perfect solution when you consider, the volume of people, say, going into a mall or a hospital. IntraEdge and Pyramid Computer said they're working with Intel on a possible solution that leverages existing screening and privacy technology that their companies manufacture. And they call this kiosk design Janus. And that it's a less than 2 feet tall and a little over a foot wide, and it can check the temperature of as many as 1,500 people per hour. It will also have the annoying laugh like the character Janice on the show Friends, and will say things like, Chandler. All right, just checking to see if you're paying attention. That's not part of the story. In any case, the Janus, the way it would work would be that you would open up a Janus website on your smartphone, and you'd fill out a questionnaire specific to the venue. So say you're going to a concert or you're going to a mall, you're going to pull out a questionnaire specific to that. And you may be asked to verify your identity with a 2-factor authentication. And you step up to this machine. And then after scanning a QR code you have on your phone, you place your head in the range of the camera, and within 1 to 5 seconds, the machine will send the temperature information to your mobile device. The screen on the Janus device won't show your result, but will tell the screener if a guest has been granted access to the venue or not. So it's going to talk about you without you knowing what it's saying. I don't mean to sound cynical. I think this is actually a good thing, but that struck me. For those without a smartphone, there will be prompts on the kiosk itself to fill out, and it'll probably just take a little bit longer. But then again, who doesn't have a smartphone at this point? The data is not stored in the kiosk. Instead, it is immediately encrypted and transferred via IntraEdge's Troyo privacy platform. The kiosk uses Pyramid's thermal imaging technology and has an error margin of less than 1/10 of a degree Fahrenheit. There are limits to temperature screening. We've talked about this in previous podcasts with the fact that while it doesn't necessarily catch anyone who would have COVID symptoms, it would at least detect those who have a fever. So, there's still a chance that people could be non-symptomatic yet and have COVID and still pass this test. And that, frankly, is something that a lot of companies are struggling with. And I think the point is there isn't probably a perfect solution right now that's going to screen anybody who has the virus or be able to find them and pick them out perfectly. But I think with a combination of technologies like this and social distancing and masks and, whatever other rules can be put in place to keep people from contaminating others. 25% of people infected with COVID may not show any symptoms. So that's still, a quarter of the people walking around that have it. So it's something that we still have to figure out. Automakers like Ford have implemented strict return to work protocols that include temperature screenings. A lot of companies have as well. And interestingly, though, Ford was forced to shut down its Chicago plant twice in less than 24 hours after 2 workers tested positive for coronavirus. And it also had to shut down its Michigan truck plant after 1 employee tested positive there. So I guess that's the other side to this, is not only having the technology and the procedures and protocols that will help identify who's at risk and who may be contagious, but then what do you do about it as a result of finding that? And, in this case, the company had shut down those plants. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what Tesla is doing, which usually doesn't really align with everybody else, but we're going to give a little update on Tesla in the next segment after this commercial.
The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast, the show that gives you advice on everything travel. We explore places you've always wanted to go, as well as giving tips for traveling in those places. We'll give you advice on the best sites for travel tips, information, and discounts. Join us as we travel the world, explore cultures, and meet new people. The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast has got you covered. Download the GSMC Travel Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
So in this last segment, I thought it was appropriate that we talk about Tesla and what's happening there. Seems that there's a headline every week about Elon Musk or Tesla, particularly regarding the pandemic. Elon Musk has been quite vocal in his skepticism about the virus and how it should be handled, and really has come down hard on the side of, business as usual kind of approach, it seems. In any case, there was this controversy because the Alameda County Health Department had said that manufacturing plants could return to operations provided that they gave a plan of how they were going to set up their factories and set up protocols to, prevent the spread of the virus and to ensure health and safety of the workers. They had asked for that plan, Alameda did, and then said that manufacturers could return to their plants on May 18th. For Musk, he was pretty much outraged by that, by having to wait to that point, particularly as other things within California were opening up. The governor had deferred judgment to counties, to local authorities, where it made sense to do so. If there were reasons that they needed to delay opening certain businesses, that they had that leverage to do so. Elon Musk was, of course, critical of that and felt that, all of California should be treated the same. And in any case, a week before he was supposed to, or he was given, the framework to open up, he opened around May 9th that weekend and started to start the factory again. And since that time, and at that time, he said, if you have to come and arrest somebody, you can come get me because I'll be out there, on the factory floor. And from what I have seen or not seen, it doesn't look like anything ever happened to him. He wasn't arrested, and I don't think there were any arrests at all, or any measures taken for him to cease operations. He continued operating, but now he has come out with a statement to employees, to Tesla's employees, that they're returning to normal operations at their U.S. car and battery factories. And, I'm not sure what that means entirely, because they have been back in operations. I guess there are certain things that they did, like bonus pay or premium pay, they were calling it, for some workers during this time. And I'm not sure who qualified for that, what it was, but I guess it was for, extraordinary dedication. And that's supposed to continue to the end of May. But the significant thing about this email that went to production workers at Tesla is that employees have the option to take unpaid leave until May 31st with HR approval if they're worried about being exposed to the virus, or exposing a family member to the virus that they might pick up and bring home. Now, it's not a slam dunk. They have to get approval and fill out a lot of different forms to do that. But I guess that's his way of saying, hey, if you're not comfortable in this environment, it's fine. But, you'll keep your job, but you just won't get paid. His memo did state that, of course, if you are infected with COVID and you are out of work, that you still continue to be, and you will continue to be paid. And that, he wants you to do that, or the company wants you to do that. The memo had said that regular attendance policy will be in place as of Friday. And that the provision is that those who want to stay home due to concerns about exposing a vulnerable member of their household to COVID-19 will have to file paperwork describing the situation to Tesla HR and get approval first for their unpaid leave. Once approved, they can take unpaid leave through the end of May. So at this point, we're really only talking about another week or so. And at that point, they're in normal operations. So I just wanted to give a little update on that. I have seen other articles. I don't know how substantiated they are, but workers have come forward anonymously to complain about the conditions in the factory, saying that although they check temperatures and do questionnaires at the door as you come in, that you're still very close to other factory workers on the actual floor. Now, those are allegations, not saying that they are confirmed, but that's what a couple of employees have said and I'm not sure if they filed suits, but they have at least brought their complaints forward to one media outlet. Another thing about Tesla that I thought was kind of interesting, and it doesn't really have much to do with Tesla, but I saw something recently, I think it might have been through NPR, that there's a woman in California who somehow ended up with Elon Musk's old cell phone number. When she got her new cell phone a few years ago, his number was reallocated to her. So she, from time to time, gets very interesting text messages or calls from people who had his old number. And the article talks about how, some of them have been funny and some have called to say, or they have ideas for a vaccine and they want to talk to him about it, or some millionaires have called or billionaires have called or texted to say they love their new Tesla and they just wanted to tell him what a great product it is. Others have submitted proposals or want to talk to him about proposals. And the funny part is that when the woman first started getting these calls and texts, she didn't even know who Elon Musk or Tesla was, which is kind of funny. I mean, she sure does now. And in fact, she kind of keeps an eye on the news, because whenever he's in the news, that's when her phone starts lighting up with messages. And the reporter who wrote the story about her said that, he reached out to Elon Musk to find out if he knew that this woman had her number or had his number. And he said something like, "Oh, that's such an old number." He didn't really answer the question, but said, "Oh yeah, that's a really old number. I can't believe it's still out there." And then he was asked, "Do you sometimes give that number when you don't want to talk to people?" And he didn't answer that question, which is kind of funny. So that's one way to approach people you don't want to talk to. And then I was thinking, and it didn't say anything about this in the article, but I mean, she really could have fun with that. I mean, if that were me, that's what I would do. Despite the fact that I don't sound like Elon Musk, but like with a text or something, it could be a lot of fun to represent him, because I mean, if she doesn't say that she's him, but she just answers a question or makes a statement, what can they do? Anyway, I thought that was kind of a funny thing, and I wanted to end the podcast on that note, because we are at the end of another GSMC Business News podcast. And I want to thank you for joining me, and hope that you check out some of the other podcasts that are on the GSMC Podcast Network. And also check out our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages and leave us a message on there. Give us some feedback. We would love that. So for now, and probably for a little while forward at least, I'm Paula DuPont, and I'm your host, and I'm wishing you a great day. Take care.
You've been listening to the GSMC Business News Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type GSMC into your favorite podcast app to find all of the shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, from business news to weird news. Please subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's podcast.